Good morning. I trust you have enjoyed our Spring Forward presentations over the last couple of days, and I'm sure that there are some key points that you can use in your businesses. For our final presentation in the series today, we have Samantha Leigh, our Sustainability Lead here at David Luke, speaking with Senior Lecturer Claudia Henninger about circularity and clothes swapping and how we can all stop clothes from going into landfill. Once again, thank you for listening, and I hope you all have a successful and safe reopening of your stores. Bye for now.
Hi everyone, I'd like to welcome Claudia Henninger, who is a Senior Lecturer at Manchester University. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and your background?
So I'm Claudia. I'm a Senior Lecturer at the University of Manchester, and I teach fashion marketing and management. And for my research background, I've got a management marketing background, and within my PhD research, I looked specifically at sustainability in the fashion industry. And that research has been, like this passion, has been carried forward. So I'm currently still researching everything to do with sustainability in fashion.
Amazing, thank you very much. So, are there any interesting fibres used in clothing that have surprised you?
There's actually more and more coming up. One of the most fascinating ones, at least like for me, is the ones made out of fruit or waste materials. So there's pineapple fiber, there's orange fiber. I find it fascinating because I think it's so great to see that kind of like out of trash or what other people probably consider as being trash or waste, you can still make something where you actually have a treasure afterwards. So just being able to reuse and sort of like see other industries as resources, I find really fascinating.
Wow, that's really interesting. Thanks for that. So, do you see clothes swapping as the new next thing?
Quite an interesting question. Actually, clothes swapping is, just to quote an article, as old as humankind, because we've always swapped clothes, but it has just been more popularized, I think, probably also like through technology and um, being able like to also like now swap with strangers. I think it's interesting. It's a very fascinating phenomenon, and it has gained quite a lot of popularity. And now there's also a lot of online swapping available, which is quite interesting to actually see.
Yes, I totally agree with you on that one. Can you tell us what happens with our end of life garments currently?
It's a very big question. There's so many different opportunities. I mean, like at the end of our, so if I, for example, say my sweater has reached its useful life, at least for me, but if it's still in good condition, it could either be, for example, like donated to charity, it could be dropped into one of the clothes bins, it could be swapped. It just could be given as a present or anything else. So we could still make sure that somebody else is making use of it. If it's broken, we could also see whether or not it can be upcycled, so just make something different out of it, or downcycled. So, for example, I just recently watched a very fascinating video where you can make, for example, like a rag out of your jeans,
Mm.
just to be like, try something creative, do something different, which was absolutely fascinating. Or it's also like giving it to recycling facilities, so where they can actually really recycle the fiber. Unfortunately, there's also a lot of garments that end up in landfill, which is the place that we hopefully all try to avoid.
Mm.
But sometimes it's also because we as consumers might not necessarily know like where to drop things off or where to give things to. And we feel potentially like dropping it in the bin might be the only option for us. So yeah, there's different opportunities of where to actually get it to before it's not valuable in a way anymore.
Yeah. Well, let's hope nobody does throw it in the bin. So, in your opinion, how can the industry make clothing more circular so that maybe it doesn't end up in the bin?
I mean, like there's fascinating initiatives already out there. So there's the take back schemes where you can drop your garments off in a store and potentially get store credit. There is swapping initiatives. There's also now a lot of companies are buddying up almost with other companies such as rentals.
Mm.
So they try to kind of like change things that they're currently doing. Uh, But then there's also starting from the design process. So if you, for example, design for zero waste, either like there's fascinating pieces of garments out there where you can have 30 different outfits with just having one thing that either wear as a dress, as a skirt, as a t-shirt, as a handbag, as a snood, anything that is there, which is also great. There's also, in terms of fibers, so just designing them that they can actually be recycled or reused. So there's also companies out there that already just lease their garments and then want them to take them back. If they're still usable, they use them secondhand. If they're not usable anymore, they sort of like break them down into their fibers and then restart the whole process again. So it's a lot of different opportunities and a lot of different options of what can be done and what the industry is already doing. But again, it's quite exciting to actually see what the future holds, especially with technology emerging, with lots of new and different trends coming up. People are always really creative, and there's so many different things that will probably be coming up that we can't imagine at the moment.
Wow, that sounds really exciting. And are there any initiatives retailers can take up to make clothing recycling more accessible for consumers?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, like, this is just the sort of like what I said before about seeing our general waste bin as the last sort of like resort. So I think if there would be facilities out there where even if things are broken, where we could drop them off just to be recycled, that would probably be really helpful. Um, I mean, like in some councils, I'm assuming they already like do something like, for example, like collecting them off the street. If you put them in a bag on a regular basis, you've got clothing bins. But then again, there's only like garments that obviously are not soiled that are still wearable, that should be donated in there. So I think we just probably need to have a little bit more variety of what we can drop off, because unfortunately, while it's great when all of our clothes are still in perfect condition, and other people can use it, but unfortunately sometimes it just doesn't happen, especially if you, I don't know, if you look at kids and they're running around and something rips and
Yes.
it just can't be like used anymore. We also like need to make sure that we can actually give things away to be properly sort of like distributed of, sorry, disposed of afterwards as well, and that would probably be quite helpful.
That's great. Thank you very much. Just one last question. How hard is it for the recycling of school uniform with badges on them?
It's a very good question, and to be quite honest, I do not know. I can imagine it might be very difficult, because it's very unique to
Yeah.
different schools. Um, I would say it would probably be quite useful to sort of like say if you can build more communities to share and to
Mhm.
say that at least like people who've got, in this case, like a similar interest, so the same school uniforms because the kids all go to the same school. It would be quite good to have those communities and really foster this kind of like exchange and um, making sure that those school uniforms are also used a lot more, especially with school uniforms. Kids probably grow out of them a lot faster than they
Mhm.
would be really damaged, because I can just imagine like a tie or a blazer might not necessarily um, finish its useful life after one child, because the child's probably growing a lot quicker than they might wear it only like 10 times or something, probably a lot more, but just to sort of like slightly over exaggerate. So it would be good like if there's more children who can actually wear the same thing, and
Mhm.
it's also not an item that is probably used a lot in terms of like the material might still be very good, for trousers or something. Potentially like there might be rips if you slip or trip,
Mhm.
or just like generally running around, which is great. But yeah, for other pieces, it might be really good just to have more of a community base and a community approach.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much for your time today, Claudia. And thanks everyone for listening. Speak soon.